Hi, it's me again, your headphone-wearing ethics professor, Dr. Gettinger. And on whatever day it is that you're watching this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of moral language. Uh, this is important to us, at least because ethics is about the use of moral language, and depending on how you think moral language works, different kinds of things follow. We could do a whole course actually just on questions concerning the nature of moral language. This isn't our primary goal, so these first couple of conversations about moral language are just going to be primers, really, so that we can build up a good battery of assumptions and some understandings that are necessary to talk about moral disagreement and moral arguments in a certain way. By way of example, maybe you've heard somebody say something along the lines of stealing is wrong, or hurting people is wrong, or you shouldn't shove that person because not only do you not have any good reason to, but you have every reason to think that it was the morally wrong kind of thing to do. If you've ever used one of these sentences or you've heard somebody else use one of them, then you might wonder, well, what exactly do these sentences mean? How do they work? And can they be true? So let's deal with maybe a less controversial kind of sentence and a less controversial subject, like small, cute, black kittens. Take a look at these four sentences about this little cat and ask yourself the following questions. Would you be willing to affirm that one or more of them is true? Would you be willing to affirm that one or more of them is false? Would you say one of them could be true or false, but you just don't know whether or not it is? Or would you say instead, no, actually, one or more of these sentences can't even be true or false? Let's see how that would go. I think I could pretty well convince you that this first sentence is either true or false. That is, it's the kind of sentence that could be true. It's a sentence about the color of the cat. We could disagree about this. Maybe you looked at this picture and said, oh no, this cat is not black. In fact, it is black and white. So the sentence is false. If you think this, then you just think that the sentence could be true and just happens to not be true. The second sentence might give you different kinds of intuitions here. Probably you think that the sentence is true or could be true, but it might depend on how the person is using the word small here. Do they mean like small absolutely, or are they comparing it to something? The third sentence, I think, is a little bit more confounding. Some people have a very strong intuition that this sentence is neither true nor false or something more confusing. And part of this just has to do with the way that we use words like cute or beautiful or disgusting, these different words that seem to reflect what some people call opinions. I think a better way of thinking about these is not as opinions, but as expressions or reports of our tastes. So when I say that a cat is cute, maybe I just mean that the look of that cat is pleasing to me. If that's what I mean, then I definitely am saying a sentence that is of a type that could be true. And in fact, probably it is true unless you have a good reason to think that I'm lying about how I feel about cats. So there are certain kinds of sentences which not only could be true, but are true whenever they are spoken sincerely. The last sentence is even stranger. Trying to figure out whether or not this sentence is true or false hits a wall. Because if I were to say to you, scram, right, you might say no, but you wouldn't say false, right? It would be like as if you were cheering for your favorite football team and someone turned to you and said false. Maybe they could say boo, but false seems like a misunderstanding about what commands and expressions of attitude are like. So, onto the subject at hand. Imagine there exists a person one who says stealing is wrong and another person who says no, stealing is not wrong. This is maybe typical of the kind of thing that we sometimes call a moral disagreement. Is it a disagreement, though? It depends on what you think these words mean. I'm going to stipulate for our purposes that a disagreement happens when one person thinks a particular claim is true and another person thinks that exact same claim is false. And not all things that look like disagreements actually are disagreements. So take a look at this example here. So let's say that person 1 says that the cat is black and person 2 says no, the cat is not black. This really does look like a disagreement about the color of the cat. Now, maybe you could explain the disagreement by saying that, like, well, this one person is experiencing the cat as black because they're colorblind or something like that. But still, ultimately, it could be the case that they're disagreeing about the actual color of the cat. If they're just talking about how they experience it, then they're definitely not disagreeing. The case of a person asserting that the cat is small and another person asserting that the cat is not small is a little bit different. This could be a disagreement or maybe not, depending on how small is being used. Maybe what person 1 really means is that the cat is small for a cat, and person 2 means, no, 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 the cat is not small for a cat. This again looks like a straightforward disagreement about the size of the cat relative to other cats. But imagine that person number 2 means this very strange thing, that no, the cat is not small for a dog. Now, it doesn't seem like these two people are disagreeing. They're talking about two completely different things, and probably if we pointed this out to them, they would just stop talking about the subject, or they would adjust their language to make it clearer. They're just talking past one another, as we so often do. Here, this is the kind of thing where you might be willing to say this is a disagreement, but probably it isn't one. If it turns out that saying that something is cute is just a way of saying that something is pleasing to you, then really a person that says that a cat is cute is saying something is pleasing to them, and a person who's saying that it is not cute is really just saying that it's not pleasing to them. These two people actually don't disagree. They just have different tastes, and the way that they're expressing those tastes or reporting those tastes makes it look like a disagreement. In fact, probably the second person is happy to believe that cats are pleasing to the first person, and the first person is happy to believe that cats are not pleasing to the second person. There is no single fact that one of these people thinks is true that the other person says is false. Resolving the fourth pair of sentences here is especially interesting. These two people do seem to disagree, but what do they disagree about? At least about what they want the kitty to do. One of them wants the kitty to come closer, and the other wants them to go away. They wish for different things to happen, right? Maybe also they disagree in their attitudes about the kitty. So if there's a disagreement happening here, and there might be, it's about a very different thing than whether or not the cat is black or the cat is small. It's about something else. The reason why this is important is that people who think about moral language think that there's different implications of moral language doing different things. So, for example, most people that study the nature of moral language think that moral claims like stealing is wrong are claims that can be true or false. And in particular, those claims are about certain moral facts. This means that moral claims like stealing is wrong are most like claims of the sort that the cat is black or the cat is small are like. They're either absolute or comparative or relative descriptions of certain facts about the world. If these people are right and moral claims are true or false and they're about moral facts, this means that moral disagreement can and does occur, that there are some people who think some things are wrong and some other people think are right, and they're arguing about something real. A smaller group of people think that some moral claims can be true or false, but actually that almost all of them are true because they're about preferences. They're expressions or reports of preferences that are sort of hidden in this disagreement type language. If these people are right, that means that moral language is mostly about the kinds of things that we're talking about when we say that the cat is cute, and you say that it's not. It looks like a disagreement is happening, but almost certainly no disagreement is occurring because we're just talking about ourselves. There's also a way in which this might work in a kind of relativistic framework, as Rachels describes in The Challenge of Cultural Relativism. Another small group of people think that moral claims can't be true or false at all. And in particular, that's because they're expressions of attitudes or they're things like commands. These people think that moral claims are most like sentences like scram or come here. If these people are right about moral language, it means that moral disagreement might be able to occur, but if it does occur, it only occurs with respect to what we think should happen next, or what our attitudes are like. It's also possible that there aren't really any disagreements at all. The reason why this matters to us is twofold. One is that if you have a certain view of what moral claims are like, you're just going to think that a lot of the content of ethics doesn't make any sense. Frequently, we're going to talk about whether or not there are good reasons to either do or not do something. And when we think about good reasons to do things, usually we think of something being wrong as being a good reason not to do that thing. But if you don't think that there is such a thing as wrong, that is, that you think that all sentences that contain the word wrong can be true or false, like that's just not possible, then certain obvious consequences follow, like moral disagreement doesn't occur, and the analysis of moral reasoning that we're going to do doesn't work at all. So if moral claims can be true or false, and some of them are false, that is, they're not just like preferences, then presumably there must be some way to tell which are true and which are false, and there must be some way of describing having good reasons to think that some moral claims are true and others are not true. I bet at least some of you were skeptical throughout this discussion that we'd ever be able to tell which moral claims are really true and which are really false. That's fine, and I think lots of ethicists would agree with you that it's very hard to figure out which moral claims are true and which are false. But it's very different to say that no moral claims even can be true than it is to say that it's just going to be really hard to figure out which ones are true. One of those admits of the possibility that moral disagreement occurs, and the other one suggests that moral disagreement just never happens. So you may continue to harbor some skepticism about the existence of morality, but the kinds of conversations that we're going to have in the weeks to come are really going to operate under the basic assumption that moral claims can be true or can be false, and in particular that some of them are false. And really what we mean by this is that we can have good reasons to think that certain moral claims are true and have good reasons to think that some others are false. In the weeks that follow, of course, we're going to try to figure out how to do that. It turns out to be just as complicated as you thought it would be, but hopefully also it turns out to be a little bit more possible than maybe you are currently worried it might be.